Over the past 3 decades, Paul Weinberg travelled to sand communities in Namibia, Botswana and South Africa to document their lives of the modern sand and tell their stories. His journey culminated in him visually documenting and writing books about the communities, including the photographic book Traces and Tracks, a 30-year journey with the sand. Paul Weinberg joins us from our Cape Town studio to tell us more about the book and, of course, these journeys that he went on. Paul, great to have you. Thanks so much for being our guest here on Morning Live.
Oh, thank you very much.
So you first visited the sand in 1984. What fascinated you to study and document the sand of Southern Africa?
Well, on one level, I'd been at university and I'd studied anthropology, and I'd learnt about the San, our first people, Africa's first people, and I was intrigued to know more about them. At the same time, I'd also been in the South African Army as a young conscriptee, and I'd seen, the damage that had been done to indigenous people who were then drawn into the war against SWAPO at the time. So I just wanted to see how the San were coping. And so I took a trip to Namibia, and I connected with the famous filmmaker John Marshall, and I went on a trip. And my experience was not exactly, fantastic. I mean, people were in a bad state. Many of them were drunk. They'd blown the South African Defence Force wages. And so it begged a lot of questions, and that really prompted the journey that took all these years.
Yeah, when we look at this book, because it really is a massive journey that documents some of the sand's sad and traumatic history. Can you relate some of those stories to us?
Yeah, just as a sort of background, most of the stories about the sand that come out and continue to come out are about people frozen in time, living in primitive affluence, untouched by history and social conditions. And, that traumatic trip and climactic trip for me just set in motion a whole range of questions and journeys. So from place to place, I went to Namibia. I witnessed actually a kind of a turnaround. They were threatened, the land was threatened, but then by the time the Namibian elections happened, there were very positive things in place. I witnessed in Botswana, very unfortunately, the dispossession of the last of the sand living in the central Kalahari Game Reserve. And then I also, witnessed the resurrection, if you like, of the San in South Africa, and them having basically been totally dispossessed, winning the land back and gaining their land in 1999 when the Kumani San gained the land near the Transfrontier Park in Northern Cape.
Yeah, it's quite a sad story to tell, in fact. And I mean, when you look at the San and the talk about ownership of land, because that is a very, very big issue for them. But I mean, you've interacted with them, you've seen many of the issues that have come out of it. How important is it for them?
It's a very deep African question as well, about ownership of land and how people see land. It's not about title deeds. It's about a deep connection to the land spiritually, land that means so much to people, and it's marked. This is an area where people have rights. In Junqua language, it's called Angore, and Angore is where you have rights to land, you have rights to hunt, and those are inalienable. They are your basically your traditional title deed. But these traditional title deeds, if you like, have been eroded over time. Mm-hmm. And when people start to lose their land, the whole culture starts to subside, and you have people in a kind of a traumatic place, struggling to hold on to the ways of life that were for thousands and thousands of years just seen as irreversible. That was their way of being.
You know, one of the things that I think we all need to know about the San, and which, you know, maybe we don't know too much about, is that they're a very sacred community that have a close relationship with nature, survival skills, their hunter-gathering existence. How have you managed, or how have they, I should say, managed to conserve their culture and their heritage? And I know that throughout your photographs you do show this culture and heritage as well, but for them and preservation of it, are they succeeding at it?
You know, that's a very important question because, as I said, the way people traditionally want to portray the San is they set them up and they kind of recreate these people frozen in time, living in primitive affluence. But, you know, the San have also moved with time. So you'll find that, you know, they live a mixed economy. They hunt, they gather, they farm. Sometimes they work as farm laborers. Sometimes they, actors, as you've seen in films like The Gods Must Be Crazy. You know, they do a myriad of things. They sell crafts. So, you know, it isn't just one-dimensional. It's multi-dimensional, and that's essentially how we all live. Most of the San people still speak their traditional languages, which is very encouraging. And you know, that's a sort of also a basis of culture. And these languages are some of the oldest on the planet. And we should do everything we can to preserve these languages because they mean so much for our, not only our national, but our, you know, global heritage.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I know that this is a huge campaign to make this one of the 12th languages of South Africa. I mean, the San, as you mentioned, having 35 different languages. Well, I think this is a fabulous book. And thank you so much for sharing these photographs on your journey with us. So, Traces and Tracks, a 30-year journey with the San, Paul Weinberg. I imagine, Paul, this is available at all leading bookstores and online? All right, it is. I can see Paul saying, yes, it is available. So, Paul, thanks very much. Go and get your coffee if you're interested in just the San history and this journey that Paul's been on.